Hello and welcome to a quick guide going over 10 beginner tips that you'll want to know if you're new to the game or if you're considering picking it up the next time that you see it on sale. Let's get right on into it. Tip number 1. Shoot on the beat, reload on the beat, dash on the beat, use abilities on the beat. These are absolutely essential skills to develop early on and are the hardest part of the game's learning curve. If you don't shoot on the beat, two things will happen. You'll jam your gun for one beat, making it impossible to actually shoot an enemy, and 2, you'll get a worse clear bonus on the room when you finish it, meaning a smaller reward. This second part goes for doing anything off the beat unsuccessfully, so not just shooting. Once doing these actions on the beat becomes second nature, everything else falls into place. This should be priority number 1 as a new player, more important than even trying to beat the first boss. But if you are having trouble with him, I've got a video on that, link in the description below. If you're really struggling with the rhythm aspect, and rhythm has never been something you were particularly good at, feel free to change the setting in the options to loose. This will make it a lot easier for you, without compromising the satisfying audio feedback you get from shooting and reloading on the beat. Tip number 2. Bind your reload to your right click on your mouse. Many of the guns in the game require you to press the reload button multiple times in a row, which if you were using the R key, would prevent you from strafing to the right at the same time. You don't want to get stuck having to reload while trying to move to the right to avoid some projectile only to ruin your reload halfway and get stuck trying to shoot without any bullets in your gun. Right click makes sense to me, but bind it to whatever makes sense and is comfortable for you. You'll be using it a lot. Tip number 3. Play on practice mode when first starting out. I know this may seem like an obvious tip to a lot of players, but practice mode is the best mode to learn the game on. You take less damage when you're hit, the enemies are less aggressive, bosses have less HP, and there are only 4 floors for you to complete instead of the usual 8 in the harder difficulties. When I first started playing back in December, there was no practice mode, only easy, and it really kicked my butt early on to the point that I thought the game wasn't for me. I gave up right away. Once the Overdrive update came out back in early February, I decided to pick the game up again and I actually learned how to play in practice mode. It was such a better experience than being thrown into easy mode with no tutorial or anything. After those first couple hours of teaching my brain to shoot on the beat and not whenever an enemy is on my crosshair like I normally would, I started really enjoying myself while playing. Once you feel like you've come to grips with the rhythm mechanics and maybe beaten the boss on the 4th floor, absolutely go ahead and ramp up the difficulty. I think you'll know when you're ready. Tip number 4. In most cases, it's a good idea to run around the room in circles while taking down the enemies one by one. This will depend on the room. Some are very small and hallway-like, so this tip is much harder to apply in there. But in general, you can keep walking or dashing around the rooms in a circle to avoid getting hit by projectiles and to group up the melee enemies that chase you, making for easy pickings once you've dealt with the flyers. Tip number 5. Speaking of flyers, prioritize taking out the flies and fly nests when you run into them. Often, you'll find yourself in rooms with a mix of flies and other enemies. Shoot the flies down first unless there are fly nests, in which case you want to destroy those first since they will continuously spawn flies if you leave them alone. The amount of times I've lost a run to flies because I focused on other enemies first is gigantic. Very quickly, if you're enjoying the video and you find it helpful, please give the video a like and leave a comment down below. It very much helps me out. Tip number 6. Pick up damage upgrades as often as you can. Whenever you see a damage shrine, it looks like this, you should make sure to pick it up, unless doing so would stop you from buying a better weapon upgrade or a really good item like the infinite ammo shield you found in one of the shops. Also, as a side note, don't go for ability upgrades at all when starting out. They look like this. You only unlock abilities from beating the game on easy and hard mode, or from libraries and some special chests during your runs, meaning that the ability upgrade is doing nothing for you unless you have one of those. Tip number 7. Don't save up your coins and keys for later on in the run if you're having a hard time already. You're better off trying to give yourself the most chances at getting item upgrades or weapon upgrades to turn what looks like a losing run into a winning one. This means spending your coins on items you see in the shops or at gambling rooms, and your keys on locked chests. If you get unlucky and don't get anything good, it's no big deal because your run was already giving you trouble and probably doomed from the start. The next run might be the one where you get the incredibly fun minigun and infinite ammo combo. Who knows? Tip number 8. Get your free keys from the Miniboss rooms. Every floor has a Miniboss room that when defeated will grant you a key. Most of these Minibosses are pretty easy and shouldn't give you much trouble. Use these keys on unlocking chests and the library, or unlocking access to the Asgard Crypts. Tip number 9. Speaking of the Asgard Crypts, stay away from them as an absolute beginner. That floor is much more difficult than Asgard 2, with enemies that have higher HP and trickier attacks to avoid. I would only recommend going into these crypts once you've got a handle on the game and are feeling adventurous. The rewards for going there are quite good, as there is always a guaranteed well room where you can pick one of 4 items presented to you. There's one of each slot type, as well as a tribute room which lets you exchange coins for random stat increases. Generally very good value for each coin. Tip number 10. Don't panic. When I started out, I would completely panic when I encountered a room with an overwhelming number of enemies. Sometimes it just didn't feel fair and my brain would immediately go into panic mode, where I start shooting anything as soon as I see it and jump around the room like some kind of bunny rabbit. Instead, when this happens, try to remain composed and focused. You make the game much harder than it needs to be by jumping around like a dummy and aiming at anything that moves towards you. Casually run around in circles like mentioned in the earlier tips, assess the situation, figure out who you need to prioritize first, and then start shooting them. You'll have a much easier time, and sure, it won't always work out. Some rooms do seem completely unfair, but by doing so you'll improve at the game, and next time you encounter a similar room, it won't give you as much trouble from the get-go. Bonus tip: pick up increased max health size items along with actual HP potions as needed. It really helps to have a huge health pool to have more room for error while learning the enemy patterns. And there we have it. 10 beginner tips that should help make your descent into Helheim easier and a lot more enjoyable. Let me know if you have any questions or if these tips end up helping you out. Also, if you're already a veteran at the game, what would be some beginner tips that you would share with new players? Let us know in the comments down below. If you're interested in videos that go over certain boss fights in the game, I'll leave a link in the description to my boss guide playlist for you to check out. As always, if you like the video, give it a like, and if not, give it a dislike. Subscribe for more BPM videos. I upload twice a week and would really appreciate the support. Thanks for watching, and have a great one.